I'm about to test how realistic the F1 game really is by trying to beat a real-life pole position inside of F1 24 time trial. The lap time that I am trying to beat is a 109.673 set by Lando Norris at the Dutch Grand Prix. And this lap was a massive 3.5 tenths faster than the home hero Max Verstappen, who qualified P2. Is this actually possible? Well, similar challenges have been attempted by other F1 YouTubers in the past, but never actually on the F1 game or on a controller, so there's only one way to find out. And probably for the first time ever on my channel, my first lap was not absolutely dreadful. However, we are still going to go through it pretty quickly because when you have a good first lap, there's actually not that much to talk about. So we are now coming into the turn 11 and 12 chicane, and I had a bit of a disaster. I just got way too eager on the throttle on the exit, but thankfully I kept the car going in a straight line. And we are now going to speed up all the way until the end of the lap to see how far away I am from beating Lando's lap time. And the answer to that is just over 5.4 seconds, which I will absolutely take, and this is because going through turn 1 on the next lap, I gained 3 tenths of a second, and I was not finished on this lap just yet. And because of this, we are going to speed up until the turn 11 and 12 chicane, because this is where the time to find was. So going into these two corners, we are already 6 tenths of a second up, and this time I was much more aware of how much I could push on the exit of turn 12. And this led to me instantly gaining a full second, which was absolutely massive for my progress in this challenge, and I finished the lap with 1.5 seconds gained. This was fantastic, and after only 2 laps of running, I was within 4 seconds of Lando's lap time. So of course I am not going to waste your time, and you are only going to see the end of these next 2 laps because, to be honest, there wasn't much to talk about. From these 2 bits of progress, I managed to gain just over 7 tenths of a second, and this was absolutely brilliant. However, considering I was just over 7/100ths of a second away from getting under 3 seconds away from Lando's lap time, I was not going to finish day 1 here. And this is the lap where I made sure that I got under the 3-second gap, and by a long way, so trust me, you want to see every single corner that I'm going to show you on this lap. Coming into the end of the first sector, I was only 100th down, which I managed to bring comfortably into the green after an unbelievable run through turn 7 and 8, which brought me to just under half a second up. After this was turn 9 and 10, and honestly I had a pretty poor turn 9, however I managed to make up for this on the exit of turn 10, and coming into the final sector, I was not done on gaining time just yet. And it's now time for the chicane, which I nailed. I got brilliant traction and rotation through both of the corners, and as we come up to the final turn, I was 8 tenths up. If I hold my nerve here and maintain my gain, this will be massive. However, through the final corner, I did even more than that. I managed to gain another 3.5 tenths of a second going through here and the banking, which was going to bring me under 2 seconds away from the goal of the challenge, and honestly, I could not have been more happy. This completely blew my expectations out of the water for day 1, and I now truly believe that this challenge was possible, but I also knew that this lap time was not going to be easy to beat. So, I'll be honest with you, before we get into day 2 isn't technically day 2. I filmed day 1 before Christmas, I had a break for a few days, and then I filmed day 2 after Christmas. This meant that I was pretty out of the rhythm of driving when starting this second day, and well, I'll just let some of these clips do the talking to show how out of the rhythm I really was. However, of course, I was not going to give up easily, and after a good first sector, we are once again coming into turn 7, but this time I'm in the green. Going through this flat out corner, I managed to somehow gain time after missing the apex, and then after this was turn 8 and 9, where I managed to bring my gain up to a massive half a second. To be honest, this could have been more if I didn't run along the grass at the apex of turn 9, but I'm not complaining. And fortunately for me, I managed to keep my gain around the 5/10th mark after a pretty successful exit out of turn 10, and as we fade into the end of the lap, I'd maintain this gain. This lap eventually put me under 1.5 seconds away from Lando's lap time, and I now had a clear goal in mind for day 2. So, as you can probably imagine, my new goal for day 2 is to get within a second of the pole position lap time, and as you can see, on the current lap, I'm 3 tenths down to the delta. However, compared to my previous personal best through the final braking corner on this track, I had a fantastic run, and I kept gaining time as we go along the banking. Ultimately, as we cross the finish line to end this lap, I only make half a tenth worth of progress, but let's be honest, every thousandth of a second counts in this challenge. And once again, you are joining me coming into turn 7. To be honest, the reason that I've rarely shown you the first sector up until this point is genuinely because I felt pretty early in this challenge that I'd reached my upper level of ability going through these corners. So for me on day 2, it was all about dialing into the middle and final sector, and as you can see on this lap, I have been on absolute rails, and coming into the final sector, I was 6.5 tenths up. fortunately for me, I managed to maintain this gain going through the chicane, and if I take this final braking corner well, I will have completed my aim for day 1 already. But sadly, I quite literally did the opposite of this. I completely bottled it going through the apex of the penultimate turn and ran along the curb, and this cost me a couple attempts. And then going through the banking, I was just so in my own head about this, and then desperately but stupidly, I avoided the inside curb, which cost me so much lap time as I was on the bumps for just so long. However, all things considered, it wasn't really that bad, as I had still made a massive 4 tenths worth of progress on this lap. And although I was a little bit disappointed with not breaking the 1 second mark on this lap, just like day 1, I wasn't going to stop trying without completing my aim. And we are now on the lap where I put my previous mistake behind me. Coming into the chicane, I was just under a tenth down to the delta, and I absolutely nailed the turn in for the first part of these 2 corners. To be honest, I could have gained more time on the exit if I didn't have a small wobble. However, it didn't really matter, and it's now time for the crucial final corner, and I just needed to stay over 400ths in the grid, which is somehow exactly what I did. I had a pretty shocking run going through the penultimate corner and the banking, but because of how bad my previous personal best run were, I managed to still gain 2 tenths of a second on this lap, which I will absolutely take, as I have now successfully completed my aim for day 1 and day 2, and it is now time for arguably the most important day of this entire challenge, day 3. Right, you lot, we need to talk. So the other day, I was scrolling the YouTube studio homepage and I came across this statistic. Honestly, I've seen hundreds of other YouTubers do this now, and I understand it's frustrating, but 9% might be an all-time low. So please do subscribe. I'm the only person involved in creating these videos, and trust me, they take hours to make. It will only take you 2 seconds, it is free, and you can change your mind if I start to post some stinky content. Anyway, back to the video, and thank you. So, as you can probably imagine, my aim for day 3 was to complete this challenge, and as we come on to lap 4 of day 3, I was about to make yet another improvement. However, this would be after a dreadful sector 1. Looking back, honestly, I've really got no idea how I managed to stay under a tenth of a second away from my personal best through this sector. However, I am not complaining. And it is now time for sector 2, and I knew that there was loads of time to find in the rest of this lap. Through turn 7, I had a perfect run, and I gained 2 tenths of a second, which I marginally improved on by cutting the apex better than last lap at turn 8. And we are now going to fast forward all the way up to the chicane, because fortunately for me, I managed to maintain my improvement up until these 2 corners. So initially, coming into and going through the first part of these 2 corners, I had a decent run. However, on the exit of the chicane, I was just way too eager on the throttle and managed to lose control of the car. And now coming into the final braking corner on this track, I was an entire tenth of a second down to the delta. And because I knew that I had nothing to lose compared to my previous personal best, I just fully sent it and borderline overcommitted, because running along the grass at the banking is definitely not the ideal racing line. But this did not matter, because I had just gained comfortably over 2 tenths of a second very early into day 3, and I was now just over 6 tenths away from beating a real life pole position inside of F1 24. And it did not take me long to improve on that lap, because after a couple of failed attempts, I was about to light up this racetrack. Through the first corner, I had an amazing run and gained a couple attempts, which I pretty much managed to maintain throughout the entirety of sector 1. But to be fair, this was only just because I had a really good exit out of the banked corner, and I just kept improving all the way up to the flat out corner of turn 7. Going through this turn, nothing really changed. However, through turn 8 and 9, I had an unbelievable couple of corners, and I'll be totally honest with you, I thought that I was going to complete this challenge on this lap. However, sadly, this thought was pretty much brought to a standstill immediately, as I ran way too deep on the entry to turn 10. However, I was still 2 tenths up coming into the chicane, and I was not finished on this lap just yet. Going through the chicane, I had fantastic rotation for turn 11, and even though I had a slight wobble on the exit of turn 12, it was nowhere near as bad as the previous lap, so I was now a huge 4 tenths up. And then going through the final braking corner on this lap, I gained slightly more lap time, and after not really running along the grass on the banking, on this lap I gained a massive 4.5 tenths of a second in total. And I was now only just under 2 tenths away from my goal, and I truly believe that I was minutes away from completing this challenge. However, that was unfortunately far from what happened. As you can see in the background, I must have spent about 2 hours just making so many stupid mistakes. I set a lot of lap times very close to my personal best, which I simply could not improve on. So ultimately, I decided that I was going to call it a day for day 3 and come back tomorrow on day 4 and try and complete this challenge, which was going to require an exceptional lap. I had done it. In the end, I beat Lando's lap time by only 8 thousandths of a second, and I was just so happy that I'd finally completed my goal. Thank you all so much for watching. Once again, please remember to subscribe, and I will see you all next week.